3DP rocks to make a lithophane. And if you haven't seen lithophanes before, a quick Google search and go to the images selection, and you can see that it prints in white filament. Well, you have to load white filament, it works the best. And then it makes a textured thing based on the grays and whites of a photograph. So when you put light behind it, it then looks like a photograph. So what's important is, first, you're going to want to make sure you have a black and white image, and I did a previous tutorial showing you how to set that up. And so for your lithophane to look the same as this image, keep in mind that since this part of the dog is lighter, then you want less filament printed here. You don't want as much thickness as you would say as glasses or the dark couch, because the darker it is, the less light that you want to go through. So if it's thicker, less light passes through, which will result in a darker looking area of the photograph. Whereas the lighter parts, you want a thinner printed area because more light will pass through, and since more light passes through, it'll show up lighter. So let's head over to 3DP rocks slash lithophane, and we're going to go to image settings first, because what I was just saying, with more light passing through, you want to keep this on positive image. And you can see there's various other settings here, which you're welcome to play with. But make sure this is set on positive image. A lot of time it defaults to negative image. So now when I flip over to images, I can click this to browse, or I can just drag and drop. And I have my folder open, so I'm just going to drop that cute little dog in. And it will load a first preview. And if you scroll your wheel, you can zoom in. If you use your right mouse button, it will pan. If you use your regular mouse button, it will orbit. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look here, you can kind of tell that his arm here is at a lower level than this, which is what we want because this is lighter than that. Okay, some other settings I want you to look at. First of all, let's look at the size. So if we go to model settings, it defaults for 100 millimeters. 100 millimeters equals inches. So you're looking at like a 4-inch photograph. So this would be, whoops, and this is the longer edge. So if we go back to images, this part's going to be about 4 inches, which isn't really a standard photograph size. Maybe we want this to be 3 inches and this to be 5 inches. So if we flip back over to Google and put a 5 here, then we really want 127 millimeter size. So I can go back here, I'll go back to model settings, and hopefully I can type in 127. Okay, thickness. The default is 3. I find that a little high, and this is talking about the thinnest part of the lithophane. 1.5 or 2 I prefer. I'll show you what a border does, but I hardly ever use them. But let me turn that up. This is going to be ridiculously big. I'm doing it just to show you what it looks like. Oh, I was wrong about the thickness. Okay, so that might be the thickest layer. I'm going to put that back to 3. I'm going to keep the thinnest layer at 0.8. I don't worry about that. I will show you what a base stand does. And we're not going to look at curvature yet, because when you make changes here, when you go back to images, you have to reload this. So I just clicked that. And you can see the changes I made. Let me fix my computer. So whoops, I'm using my wrong things. So me turn around this way. You can see it makes a stand only in the front. I never use stands. I will either set up a box to hold this in or I'll use curvature. But the other thing it did is it added this border here. So a border is completely a personal preference, whether you want to use one or not. It can add a sense of element. It actually might help if you're going to make a box to hold it in because it's a nice, even, consistent layered structure. But I'm going to go back to my settings because I don't like that stand. I just wanted to show you what it was. So we're going to go back to model settings. I'm going to take away the stand. I think I'm going to leave the border in, but set it at 4. Okay, and then I want to show you what the curve does. This is going to be, let me just go to 80. So when I make lithophanes, okay, so I clicked model. You have to click refresh to go back to model. I mean, to see the changes I've just made. I was going back to images instead of model. So you can see that, I wonder where my curvature went. The stand is gone. The frame is in. I'm not sure why I don't have curvature, so I'm going to go back to model settings. Let's turn that up. I'll try 120. Okay, back to model. And then refresh. Maybe I need to lift it up. Let's see. That's really weird that the curvature is not applying itself. Oh, you know what? I don't think you can have a border when you have curvature. So let me go back to model settings. I'll take away the border. I will go back to the model and I'll refresh. Still not getting the curvature. It's very interesting. Model, minimum size, thickness. Yeah, I know what I'm doing wrong. Sorry about that. Okay, so the curvature set, the curvature doesn't apply itself to this flat style. Flat is flat, so even if you apply a curvature, it's not going to apply. But if you change it to an inner curve or an outer curve, that number that I think is currently at 120 gives you the degree of rotation. So if I now click outer curve and click refresh, you will see that it's going to have a pretty significant curve. It's probably too big of a curve, maybe not. But usually when I do lithophanes, I either do it with this curvature or I do a flat one because then I make a stand for it or a box to go into. This is kind of nice because it's pretty easy to put a light source behind it and it will stand up on its own. You want to be careful about curving it too much. But like I think 120 is sort of a maximum and I think it's a little bit too high. I have never used inner curve because I like that the outer curve kind of hides away the light source and you wouldn't really get that with an inner curve. Whoops. So I keep using the wrong buttons. So here's what I actually want to do. Again, play around if you want to use these. I don't really use any of these solid ones because light doesn't come through very well. So let me go to model settings. And I'm going to take away the curvature, even though flat won't let me curve. And I'm going to put a border back on. Actually, I'll just type in 4. And I'm going to go back up here to model. And I'm going to refresh. Okay, it still is, oh, it still has a curvature because I'm still on the curve type down here. So let me go back to flat. And I have to refresh again. So I'm pretty happy with all my settings. When you're happy with all your settings, you're going to download it. Again, I put the border on because that'll make it easier to slide into a box. So I will click download. And then a dialog box pops up and I will write lithodog border. And I'm going to put that in pictures. Put that back in my lithophane thing. Now notice that it's making an STL file. STL files are what are needed for 3D printer slicers. So if I now go back to the folder I just used and refresh, you will see that it's starting to download and it's finished. So you probably have a 3D image reader if you double click and open it. It will show up. It won't show up with great detail, but at least you'll get a preview. And then I will have to show you how to prepare it for a 3D printer. So there we go. And yeah, so there's our lithophane. Good luck with that, and I will see you in the next video.